Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a challenge that seems almost structurally impossible.
It really does.
How does this flexible, adaptive concept of Agile and Scrum, how does it survive, let alone thrive, in environments that are defined by absolute rigidity? I
Right.
mean, we're
Yeah.
talking highly regulated industries, specifically banking. You've got complex rules, mountains of compliance, and, well, systems so old they're running on code that's older than some of the developers touching it.
It is the ultimate stress test. I mean, if a framework that's built for rapid change can function reliably when you're dealing with, multi-million-dollar transactions and SEC compliance,
Then you know it's robust.
you know it's robust. So to figure this out, we went deep into the sources. We looked at foundational insights from masters like Mike Cohn and Scrum.org, mixed with documentation from tools like Atlassian, and maybe most importantly, these fascinating real-world case studies.
The ING Bank one, especially.
The ING Bank overhaul, exactly.
So our mission for this deep dive is really focused. We aren't just going to summarize the framework. We are going to track the entire life cycle of one single feature.
A tangible.
A tangible one. Let's imagine a customer wanting to securely log into their banking app using a fingerprint. We're going to follow that idea from planning through execution to delivery, and that journey is going to be our map for you to understand how core concepts like story points and sprints actually work in the real world.
And we begin where all great products begin, with an idea sitting in the product backlog.
Right. So we've got our fingerprint login idea, and the very first question the development team has to answer is, how big is this? Now, in the old world, the answer was always.
How many hours will it take?
Exactly. But in the Agile world, the answer is the story point.
And this transition, just moving away from the billable hour, that is such a fundamental hurdle for organizations.
Why is that?
Because the moment you start estimating in hours, you introduce a fatal flaw. The hour of a senior developer and the hour of a junior developer. They're just not interchangeable.
They deliver completely different outcomes.
Vastly different. So story points just, they bypass that whole argument by measuring something else entirely.
So here's the critical difference then. Story points measure relative effort, not time.
Exactly, not time. It's a comparison.
It's a comparison point. Is this new task bigger, smaller, or about the same size as something we've already done? It forces a collective understanding of the work itself.
It does. And when a team assigns that number, they are synthesizing 3 specific dimensions of effort. You can't just focus on one.
Okay, 3 dimensions. What's the first one?
First, there's the obvious one, volume of work. Just the sheer amount of new code that needs to be written.
The simple, how much is there to do?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But then you hit the second dimension, which is where banking gets really gnarly.
Complexity.
Complexity, exactly. This often means needing to interact with or modify these old, fragile legacy systems.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. Sometimes it's that infamous COBOL code from decades ago.
And even a tiny change in that kind of code carries an exponentially higher risk.
Which leads right into the third factor, uncertainty or risk. This is all about unpredictability. Is the team dealing with brand new data security regulations they haven't implemented before? Are there unresolved policy questions from compliance?
So high uncertainty means a higher story point value, no matter how little code there is to write.
Precisely.
Okay, let's use our senior-junior example to really drive this home. A senior developer might know she can code the fingerprint login in, say, 8 hours.
Right.
But a junior developer might look at it and reasonably estimate 16 hours.
A perfectly valid estimate from their perspective.
But when they actually talk about the inherent COBOL complexity and the regulatory risk, they might both agree that the overall level of effort is the same as a previous task they delivered at 5 points.
And just like that, you move the focus from arguing about personal speed to agreeing on the difficulty of the work itself.
That shared understanding is the whole point.
It's the core value. And the technique they use to get that insight is called planning poker.
Planning poker. A lot of people assume this is just a game, but you're right, the magic is not in the number on the card.
The magic is in the conversation it forces. So the product owner explains our fingerprint feature, the team clarifies things, and then everyone throws a card at the same time.
Okay, but what happens when you get that wild spread? Let's say the senior architect throws a 3 and a newer engineer throws a 13. I mean, my instinct as a manager would be to just side with the architect.
And that's the mistake. Because that difference, the senior throwing a 3 and the junior throwing a 13, that's not a failure. It is the most valuable part of the whole process.
Why?
Because it's a structural signal of dissent. It proves there is unequal information in the room.
So instead of being a problem, it reveals a problem you didn't even know you had.
Absolutely. The junior might have been the one fixing that fragile legacy system last week. He knows this new feature touches some undocumented, brittle database dependency that the senior architect, who works at a higher level, might have completely missed.
So planning poker formalizes that dissent. It gives the person with the most current granular knowledge an equal voice.
It weights their voice equally. That's the key. It reframes the whole exercise.
And that conversation brings us to the numbers on the cards. The Fibonacci sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20. Why the jump? Why not just a simple 1 to 10 scale?
The reason for that jump is it's a huge cognitive insight, really. It's that we humans are just inherently bad at accurately estimating very large tasks.
Okay.
If a task is small, like a 2 or a 3, we can tell the difference. But arguing whether a massive piece of work is 20 points or 21 points it's totally useless. The estimate is fundamentally inaccurate anyway.
So the jump, say from 8 to 13, forces you to confront that uncertainty.
It forces you to acknowledge high uncertainty and high risk. If the team can't agree on an 8 and they start drifting towards 13 or 20, the sequence is telling them to stop.
To stop and break the feature down.
Break it down. Research the unknowns or reduce the scope. It forces you to accept the limits of your knowledge instead of pretending you can predict the future with perfect precision.
I love that. It forces humility and estimation. So after that critical debate, our fingerprint login feature gets finalized. It's an 8. Now we have this 8-point item, a bunch of others in the backlog, and the question for the next 2-week sprint becomes, how much work can we actually commit to doing?
And this is where we run into two of the most confused and misused terms in Agile.
Velocity and capacity.
Velocity and capacity. And understanding this difference is the absolute key to avoiding team burnout.
Okay, let's define them sharply. Velocity is the past.
Yes. Velocity is the rearview mirror. It's pure historical data. The average number of story points the team successfully completed and delivered in past sprints. So if they did 30, then 25, then 35 points.
Their velocity is 30.
Their velocity is 30. It's great for long-term forecasting, like when will this whole project be done?
But the world of a regulated bank is messy. The ING SAY studies talked about this. What if the team has mandatory compliance training next week? Or half the team is on vacation? You can't just blindly pull 30 points of work.
You absolutely cannot. And that is why we have capacity, which is the windshield view.
The view of what's right in front of you.
What's right ahead. Capacity is the team's actual real-time ability for the upcoming sprint. It's a calculation. You take total working hours, you subtract public holidays, planned vacations, and mandatory time in other meetings.
That is such a critical insight. Velocity tells us how fast the team has been, but capacity tells us how fast they can realistically run this time.
Right.
And forcing a team to commit to a historical velocity that ignores their current capacity is, like you said, a guaranteed formula for burnout.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
The team uses their calculated capacity to pull work into the sprint. So maybe this time it's only 25 points, including our 8-point login feature. They just use velocity as a rough guide, a sanity check.
Okay. This sprint is now officially underway. We dive right into the execution cycle, and that starts with sprint planning.
Sprint planning. And according to the Scrum Guide, this meeting answers 3 crucial questions to the team. First, why? They define the sprint goal. For us, that might be enhanced security and convenience for user login.
Okay, the why, then the what.
Second, what? The team selects the work they believe they can complete, our 25 points of work. And third, how? This is the decomposition phase. They break that big 8-point feature down into granular day-by-day tasks. That becomes the sprint backlog.
But once they start coding, that beautiful plan immediately hits reality. Things go wrong. How do they adjust without waiting 2 weeks?
That is the entire function of the daily scrum, or daily stand-up. And this meeting is so often misinterpreted.
Especially by management.
Especially by management new to Agile.
Let's talk about the anti-pattern. If I'm a manager whose bonus depends on delivery, isn't the daily stand-up just an easy 15-minute way to check who's on track and who's falling behind?
It feels like it should be, but treating it like a status report absolutely ruins the entire mechanism. The real purpose of the daily scrum is a 15-minute sync-up for the developers only.
For the team, by the team.
Yes. It's for them to inspect their own progress against the sprint goal and adjust their plan for the next 24 hours. The focus isn't reporting up. It's asking, how do we, as a team, get closer to our goal today? and identifying any roadblocks so they can help each other out.
It's an internal coordination meeting, not an external reporting meeting. That shift in power is huge.
It's everything. It's about self-management, not management reporting.
Okay, 2 weeks fly by. Our fingerprint feature is coded, it's tested, it's ready. We hit the end of the cycle, and now we have the sprint review and the sprint retrospective.
And if a listener is only going to understand the difference between two meetings, it should probably be these two.
Right. Let's use that analogy from the source material. The sprint review is the team facing outward.
And the sprint retrospective is the team facing inward.
So starting with facing outward, the sprint review.
In the review, the team presents the truly finished product to external stakeholders.
Yeah.
The product owner, the compliance VP, business analysts.
And they're getting direct business feedback.
Direct feedback. This is product inspection. The goal is to verify, does this thing we built actually solve the business problem?
Yeah.
Did the fingerprint login work? Does the business feel it met the security goals? And that feedback then refines the product backlog for future sprints.
Okay, that's looking at the product. Now facing inward, the retrospective.
This is a safe space for the team to look only at their internal process, their communication, their tools, their team relationships.
How did we work?
How did we collaborate? Did we estimate well? How can we work together more effectively in the next sprint? This is process inspection. You cannot skip the retrospective. That is where the real learning and improvement happens.
So we've mapped the mechanics, but let's go all the way back to our starting point. How did this flexible model succeed in huge regulated banks like ING, where every change touches legacy systems and needs complex sign-off? It sounds like a recipe for bureaucratic paralysis.
The strategies they used, as detailed in those Infosys and ING cases, were incredibly pragmatic. The first critical strategy was just acknowledging that the Big Bang approach
Throwing out the entire old system.
is just way too risky. You can't rebuild a bank over a weekend.
Right.
So they chose incremental replacement. They used what sometimes called a strangler pattern. They built new, modern, agile systems to sort of surround and gradually replace the old legacy core piece by piece.
They built new capabilities around the fragile COBOL core.
Until they could safely shut that old component down entirely. It's a brilliant way to manage risk.
And what about that compliance barrier? The stereotype is that legal and compliance are always the final roadblock, the wall that good ideas crash into.
That stereotype had to be completely dismantled. They stopped treating legal and compliance as this external enemy or some final separate checkpoint.
So what did they do?
They required compliance officers to be pulled into the actual development team from day one.
So a compliance officer is in the daily scrum. What do?
They become a requirement writer. The compliance officer helps define and write the non-negotiable security and regulatory requirements directly into the user story's acceptance criteria before a single line of code is written.
So compliance shifts from being a gate at the end to a continuous requirement from the start.
You build compliance in, you don't bolt it on.
That must have required a massive, radical restructuring of trust and power, not just in IT, but within the legal departments themselves.
It's a huge cultural shift. And the key factor tying all of this together, and every source emphasized this, was genuine, visible commitment from senior leadership.
Right.
In the ING transformation, the top execs didn't just approve a budget. They personally sponsored and drove the change. They showed everyone this was the new direction, not just a passing trend.
And the return on that investment is it's staggering. We saw figures where one bank got a 92% increase in paperless usage, saving almost $4 million, and their data accuracy jumped from 85% to 99.5%.
And crucially, it benefited the people doing the work. Another bank saw product quality improve by 38%, but team satisfaction, which is such a key measure of a healthy organization, that went up by 58%.
It proves that genuine agile transformation creates a more profitable, more sustainable, and frankly, more enjoyable place to work.
For everyone involved.
So we've covered estimation with story points, the agreement from planning poker, the reality check of capacity versus velocity, the execution cycle, and how banks overcame that compliance wall. It really demystifies how these massive institutions can learn to be adaptable.
The ultimate takeaway here, though, is also a warning. Agile isn't just about following rituals. It's about a fundamental shift in mindset. It's about moving trust and decision-making closer to the people doing the work.
And if that mindset isn't there,
You fall into a trap.
the trap of agile theater.
That is the perfect term for it. Agile theater is when an organization performs all the steps, They do story points, they run daily stand-ups, they hang up pretty colored Post-its.
But then the manager immediately asks, okay, but how many hours is that 8-point story really?
Exactly. They're just doing the old work with modern names. They're stripping the team of the very autonomy that Scrum is designed to give them.
If teams still need top-down approval for every little step and aren't empowered to make their own daily decisions, they're acting out of play.
The whole system collapses because the fear of failure is still greater than the value of learning quickly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If you suspect your organization is performing Agile theater, how could you test that? The provocative thought to consider is this. What is the smallest, most immediate experiment your team could run right now that truly gives them control over their own decision-making? That puts genuine power behind those story points and makes them real without waiting for C-suite sign-off. That is the real challenge of genuine transformation.